Another fun-filled day. So, yeah, yesterday was kind of interesting. So I snapped that picture of that guy Keenan, and I actually had a talk with him, and probably, I don't know if I want to say a more real conversation, but um, you know, it's pretty fascinating looking at all of this being on the inside of the situation. Now, let me just take your mind to something that nobody wants to think about. And that is when you think about conspiracy theories, theorists, and you think about like Alex Jones, and then you think about, him talking about like these staged actors and stuff. And I think that that's become a more common thing to know about with a lot of these riots, these bigger things. Like it has made sense to the mainstream world that this is something that could be being set up by the Notorious They. There should be a rap group called the Notorious They. No, that's too long, but you know what I'm saying. I would say that that's something I definitely haven't been comfortable talking about, in terms of my experience with, I don't know, sort of the setting of the scene, if you will. But I think, yeah, the last few weeks I've seen it. I think the thing that's really crazy about it is that I could see how psychologically that's a very good tactic. Blending in some of the, like, letting the real be mixed in with some of the setup shit. And then now it's even more invasive in that, like, we've already got nanotech, there's already frequencies being run at people and algorithms and data. Like, it's so technologically advanced. Obviously, I think it's something that they're still trying to get together. But, and I do think that, I think applying it to the actual populations, I think that in many ways, everything that this big push for all of this COVID, it was very messy. But I think that so many people have been so dumbed down, so beaten down, and have been taught, keep your heads down, just get up and go to work, and just that impact of that way of thinking throughout the generations mixed with all the trauma. And then this technological explosion of, these younger generations and even my generation, getting quick access to knowledge and information and piecing things together much quicker, and seeing that there is a lot of things that they can get proof for now. So you're not sort of lost in the theories or lost in sort of the craziness, and you're just trying to figure it out. So it's actually a very good tactic, I will say, from my experiences of it. And I'll just say what I feel comfortable saying. It's a really good tactic. Like, it's an epic form of gaslighting, I'll say that much. But it's still pretty wild to think that there is another side and that there's people that are involved in this, but they are. Again, I think that me saying the numbers, yes, I need to go double check, but I'm pretty sure that that's true. 2 million federal employees under the CIA and the FBI, 2 million and counting people on these terrorist lists, 10 million contractors, former FBI, former CIA, former military, and people who are still, they're operating in more, clandestine operations, which to me, I really just think how many of these people are just owned, by these families that want to carry out these orders here or overseas or whatever. And it's just certain things to me really do make sense. I think my experience with some of that, the show setup. There's times where I'm like, I'd noticed how things would play out at certain places, and the scene would so wildly change very quickly. And that can happen, especially now. Like, there's a lot of people moving around. Everything is up in the air. Everything is crazy. People are doing things that they wouldn't typically do. But there was something about it, and it was sort of like my intuition was like, okay, we're not ready for all that. We want to be careful with those thoughts, but do note that. And I think the last few weeks of my experience where I'm staying, I had to just face facts. And I'm like, all right, I'm saying this. I can't look away from this. I think if I did, I think that would be dangerous. But I'm also just going to go ahead and say I can't fucking believe I see how it turns the victim into the person who is like living with the shame of it, right? Because the way that and I've said it before, what the CIA created the term conspiracy theorists, and associated with the hippies, and then it just kept going and going, and it's made people look away from things that are very much common sense. Not only are they common sense, but they're dangerous acts being carried out on the people, on the American people, and in such crazy ways right in front of us. But so many people are so terrified of being seen as a conspiracy theorist that they create these other narratives in their head, and they run away, when deep down by now everybody knows. So I'm not sure if I'm going to post this. Maybe, I have a feeling like I should. It's just, it sucks because I've been thrown into that like category my whole life. And obviously I think though that I've done a good job in providing and evidence and all that other stuff. But, I think it comes down to, I really need to not care about the people who are just determined to see it a certain way, because it is a form of cowardice. And I think just knowing that is true, I've got too much evidence. I think though that just goes to show that even I feel that pressure. Like, I'm still going to do what I need to do to survive. I'm still going to face things, and I'm still what I am. I'm still this intuitive who's always had these guides and has had proof before I needed to show you motherfuckers proof. I'm always going to be that, but I still have a brain. I still have a right and left lobe. I still have a prefrontal cortex. I still have an amygdala. I still have all these things that it needs time to process everything. And I think that's where this stuff, all of these tools and tactics, are very effective and really fucking with somebody, because if you go questioning your whole life, something did happen. And I've seen this with people who've been involved with narcissists, and my own experience. If you your whole life can't, you're like, I think I know, I think I figured this out, because that's just how the brain works. It's like there's a party that's trapped back there in this experience. And if you can't lock that down and see that happened, then you just keep, it's like you're in a hamster wheel, and you just keep pulling in more and more of those kinds of people, those situations that are like halfway resembling what it is you can't face, and it just makes it very complicated. And I think this is the electromagnetic field, and this is true manifestation, not not the serendipity manipulative tactics via the technology. So synchronicities now can be dangerous, and that's what was very complicated for me, because I've always relied on signs and synchronicities, but they took time, and there was an order, there was a process, there was a time you could just kind of be in your feelings and thoughts about things, and things that make sense, and you can let things swirl, and then eventually you'd get a hold of yourself, and you'd go, okay, what can I do? What do I know and understand? How can I break this down and begin the process of figuring out what I can figure out here. And I think with this nanotech, with this technology, with the data centers, with all the stuff that's going on, it's robbing us of that process, because you have to understand that this nanotech and the people who are within these programs, like myself, there's like these sort of nanotech brain cages that what it's been doing is locking you into these frequencies. And it's very interesting, and it can get pretty complicated, but like I had an experience of it yesterday where I was in a meditation and I was watching certain things, and this is after my little experiences outside and talking with Keenan, but I could see how what I was processing, and that was one thing Larry kept explaining. He said, so they can hijack your neural pathway with this technology. And he showed me he stopped me at certain points and showed me and said, see, look what this is doing. And I've been zeroing in on that, but it was just very clear. And then he was explaining to me, well, we can do the same thing. And notice how you had to wait for certain things before I went, So, he said in that way, yes, this is far more invasive. This is far more cruel. And also, it's not the tool that they're expecting it's going to work out to be, because the problems with these tools are much greater than they're leading people to believe, maybe funders or whatever. I don't know all those details. There's much greater problems with this, and I think I'm even starting to understand that now myself. So yesterday when I was in my process and I felt this come in, and it was almost like sort of creating like a dual reality. And when you get around narcissists or psychopathic people, like this technology is just mimicking what psychopaths can do. And this is why I love what Sam Vaknin said, the professor and the psychologist who teaches everyone about narcissists. He himself is a narcissist. He has been saying AI is a narcissist. Like, you don't want AI. It is me. You don't want this next level of technology. He's very clear in understanding this stuff when he talks about that. And so it is. But the difference is it's not a slower flow. It's real time. It's technology, and it's mimics some of the worst people. When I woke up this morning, the first thing for some reason that I thought about was that song Creep by Radiohead. And I instantly got this image of Bryan Johnson. And right when I was like, I'm going to start my shit, I felt Larry go, give it a break. But I think that what these guys are really deep down is that song. They're trying to get away from the dirtiness, the messiness of being a human. And it's got its problems. Yeah, it's got its problems. And certainly I think that we're supposed to evolve. But I think anytime something has to move at super speed, that's usually an indication that we're heading for a mighty big fall. And the people who, I'm just going to say this, the people who are at the tippy top or whatever, they don't even realize that most of the time when this kind of shit happens like this, what they wanted, what they get trapped in, they'll never get out of. And in that way, I'm just going to say it's worse than ceasing to exist. So, I don't know. Maybe deep down I knew that and felt that. And along with the other things I'd believed throughout this process, I had just so much faith in that. But I mean, obviously, I understand the fears and why people are like, well, you need to shut up, or you need to do this, or, well, you really can't tell me. But I do understand why people would go there, because we're dealing with these megalomaniac, these millionaire, billionaire, these guys who they're just so possessed by these ideas of the world and what they want and who they are and being gods, and that we know. Shit, I saw House of Cards. Like, we know what they're capable of doing, but I've said it from the beginning, and this is something that was spelled out very clear to me, that you have to understand. They've got rules. And that's the thing. Where the rules lie is in hermetics. Signs and symbols rule the world. Where the rules lie in frequency, lie in even, ancient beliefs or religions like the Rosicrucians or Sufism. It lies in this stuff. But the only thing that is popular and more available to people is Christianity and Catholicism and Judaism and these things. But what you have to understand is that these people who are playing at these higher levels, and trust me, Keenan gave me a bunch of evidence of that yesterday, but I've had it. Just got more. And these people are playing at these levels. You have to understand they're a lot like me in many ways. Like, they've got something about them. They've got gifts. But usually they were in families. You do have certain situations where somebody came up, but Larry's like, no, that's not true. And I know what he's talking about, but I don't want to get into that. The only time, like, it's sort of in the mind frame of what I'm speaking on is when it's been sort of homegrown within these families. And there's these belief systems and there's these ways of doing things. That's why even to me it makes sense that these families, what I was shown as, these families that have this power and have this money, that they're supposed to be, like, think about how politics are. Like, they polished and they try to cover up all their bullshit, and there's just always an image being projected, and it's just all about the image, but it's not really truly reflective of the whole human being. And as a matter of fact, but it would make sense that throughout, the evolution of the family, that when there was a situation like of incest and, that grandfather, whatever, and there's people have twisted people in their family, like every family's got, shit. But they have to look a certain part, and because they have these sort of more ancient beliefs that are supported by their groups and the people who hold a great deal of power, and they understand this kind of level of knowledge, it would make sense to me that there would be, like, that's still our family, that's still our blood, but it would make sense that it's like it's almost in a religious or culty, like they put these particular bloodlines from these bigger families in these towns, and it's almost like this underground mafioso and the shit that they're involved in, and they're in the dirty side of it because they're the junk DNA. That was the child born of incest, that, and it's like, well, it's still part of our network, it's still part of our world, we still want it under control, but we know these things happen, and this is also part of it. So we're going to utilize it, but we're going to do it in this way and control it. And this is where I think the relevance of, people coming out and saying, like, how the CIA has become so corrupt, the FBI, again, the institution, I believe in the people, that it has become so corrupt because it's very much having to do with the propaganda. Like, you're a conspiracy theorist, you have the propaganda and the TV shows and how things were set, and the only people that can see it and see as clear as day is fucking stoners, somebody sitting there getting drunk, getting high, and probably people who aren't going to pull themselves up and out of shit. Well, now that's a different story, right? Because now we've got these smarter kids with technology and making their little jokes. Illuminati has been spotted, but they're going further in that they do understand these things are real, but they weren't necessarily raised with the same condemnation that the rest of us have been raised with. And in that way, they know, they're lighter about it, but at the same time, they're feeding into this new system of it. So I think that there's a thought that I need to take my time with, but I think that it's important to turn over all these stones, and I would like to say once again that I do believe that I was born to go through this, because like I said, back in 2012, when Larry was saying to me, pointing things out to me, and I was like, no, you got to tell me that this is like, why would these beautiful people, I've said that, why would these beautiful people do that? Why would these rich people? And I looked at politicians, I looked at these people like they're far more educated, and I'm never going to understand their vast intellects and what power they have and how they're using it to protect us, and we just don't understand. And then he said what he said about look this up at the White House, and I did, and you could have knocked me over with a feather. And from there, I knew I couldn't look away, because it wasn't what was projected onto me. It was, this is how it played out. This is how I ended up looking into that stuff. And so I see this sort of like as my mission. I see this sort of as something that I was supposed to go through. But it's not that it doesn't have its scary moment. It's not that I'm like, oh, I mean, you've seen that. I've shown like, what the fuck? All right. Because again, I have a brain and I have all those parts, and I am still an everyday person. I can still connect to. I see that difference between me and Keenan, and that was another reason I think I was happy that conversation played out yesterday, because he's definitely one of my gifted, but he hates talking about the everyday, He sort of just wants to stay in this sort of like spiritual way of thinking, and I do understand that, but when you're dealing with the rest of the world, there is like a common denominator, and the things that need to get done, and we sort of find our ways to communicate and figure out our boundaries. But like, not everybody is a Buddhist, not everybody is a Catholic, and most of the time those faiths are practiced with your tribe, your group, your church, with your family at home. And then when you go out into the world, those prayers, that energy that you build up, those beliefs, that is your shielding, that is your energy, your support that carries you through. But you're not on a business call and like, unless of course you're a church leader or something, praise Jesus. Like, that's not what we're doing, because we understand that everybody has different beliefs, and there is a common way of connecting with other people where you don't have to go into the stuff that should be personal and should be allowed, provided it isn't raping and killing and destroying. You know what I mean? I mean, I think it's pretty simple. But I can do that no problem, and I very much love shooting the shit with people. I like talking about things that are not, I can talk about spirituality, I could talk about all kinds of stuff, but I like shooting the shit about all kinds of things. And I can see how, people get stuck, and then they can't understand, and then they see everybody else as like a problem and an enemy. And I want to say, yeah, yesterday I watched that with him, because we actually had a very interesting conversation, but I'm well aware of what I'm dealing with, and I know why that happened. And essentially, I set that up. Told you, world-class bait. And I'm glad I did it, because I got him to talk about some interesting things that give me a lot of evidence about some stuff, some pretty good shit. And I'm just not going to talk about that right now. And I knew he was an interesting guy, and I knew that his father was high-level Navy. And when I tried to get him to talk about that, he was like, oh, like he liked to bring up or say anything that made him look superior or good, and I'm like, I'm this great. He has that air to him. And I thought I'd get him to talk about it, but he did a little bit, but he wouldn't speak specifically of his father's rank. And he kind of jumped around, but he gave me enough proof of what I'd suspected about him. And so someone like this, who's moved around the way he has and has learned the things he has and has the intellect that he has and has attracted people who are aware of the intellect he has, it made sense to me that he is where he's at right now, what he's been in. And I will say, though, that I liked him and that he's one of my gifted, but when I could really get him to show me what I think I sensed was there was, well, how did you come to be? And he started to give me the back in the day. I was working here, and this person noticed this about me, and this person was this, and led me to all these interesting worlds, and something I could relate to because I've done that in my own way. Just, I didn't take the bait, I am the bait. So I got him to show it was relatable to me. But interestingly enough, it was a cool conversation. But then in the quiet moments, I would hear Larry sit down next to me and he would say, "Don't look away from what you know you see." And he would say, "Remember, Kelly, he is a con artist." And I know anytime Larry does that, that's a blessing, because if I go against it, it's going to bite me in the ass. So as much as sometimes, trust me, I go through moments where I'm like, I really just want to think that this is an exaggeration. I just want to think, I've gone through some trauma, so there's a lot of things that are true and real. Yes, I've got too much evidence, but some of this, maybe it's just, but Larry's like, no, you can't. And you know why? And so anyways, when we were talking, and it's interesting, that's right around the time that Larry had said what he said, and the energy started to shift, and one of the other people who stay in this complex got into this like big yelling match with somebody, customer service or something, and it was like pretty intense outside near us. And I kind of took it all in stride. Like, I was enjoying myself, and I was handling the situation. I was enjoying the situation, but I was handling the situation. It was a nice day, and just taking everything one step at a time. And I watched him kind of recoil into himself. Like, as soon as the guy started yelling and his voice got to a certain pitch, he was like he could feel it. And he did. He, at some point, like, he just started going to this rant, and it was like him trying to get it out. And I've seen that before with my gifted, like, and I understand, and I understand because I am that sensitive too. I've just learned these interesting coping mechanisms, and this is where I think that the people that I grew up with who were not so sensitive and didn't make me feel like I could be comfortable being this, they also gave me a lot of gifts in that they learned how to just brush certain things out, like things that you don't need to absorb, things you don't need to break down and figure out. Like, that is what it is. Let it be a little, entertaining, and this is why I became funny. This is why everything is an interesting little anecdote in my head. And I even tried to say that to him, and he was like, yeah, I do that, but you feel this, and I was like, all right, dude, and I understand what my gifted go through, but I also understand that this is the importance of you have to come out and get to know people who are different from you. You have to learn boundaries and skills, and it can't always be like this like super deep conversation about what planet you come from, or I'm not trying to be an ass, but I can have that kind of conversation, but I don't like to have those conversations all the time and with everybody, because I think there's so much other stuff to enjoy here. And I think, to me, that stuff is private, and that is like if you go to church and this is your crew, or like, I believe in that sort of old school way. And then there's all these other parts of life, and you just do the best you can. And so I'm really grateful for the people that I grew up around, because they gave me that. Like, they weren't gonna let me be that fucking weirdo spiritual person, because I am such a weirdo spiritual person, but I'm relatable. I know about all this other shit, and I don't have to always be in this mode. And everything I've been going through here, I've had to stay in the spotlight. I've had to come out. I've had to say these things that are, could easily be turned around back on me, but I don't think so. No, I don't. I think that was a plan, but I don't think so. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. So, but I see how I understand the perspectives on this that are very realistic, and the dangers and the risks, but I would have never looked at this stuff if it wasn't, I believe in my life plan. I didn't want to believe Larry. You show me this stuff. But the reason I ended up there with him was because I was trying to understand me, myself, my family, the world around me. And I just kept asking questions and getting more answers. And then it was like we were getting into the nitty gritty. And I didn't want to believe it. And then he said something that I would have never ever thought of. And I Googled it. And there it was. And that's how I know. So we'll see. This is longer than I thought I would make it, but yeah, one day at a time.